Hello, everybody. Welcome to Redeeming the Romantic. Of course, Kim and Gary are here, and today we have a special friend with us. Her name is Kris Swiatocho, and we're so glad to have her. We love to be able to sprinkle in interviews in our show, and we want to bring out the best of the singles that we come across that can share a lot of wealth with us. So, Kris, welcome to Redeeming the Romantic.
I'm so glad to be here. This is so much fun. I'm already excited.
Let me give the introduction so I make sure I get all your goodies covered. So you are director of the Singles Network Ministry. You have served in ministry in various capacities over the last 30 years, and you are an accomplished trainer, mentor, author, and you have a heart to reach and grow people so that they'll turn around and grow others,
Amen.
especially singles.
Yep.
Does that sound pretty
Amen. Yep.
accurate? Well, tell us a little bit about the Singles Network and how you got started and what you're looking forward to this coming year.
Yeah. So the Singles Network was really started as a volunteer ministry. I was a volunteer like a lot of people. I also was serving with Campus Crusade for Christ and just working with them. And the Singles Network was owned by them. That was their ministry. And it was just in the Raleigh area, North Carolina, where I lived. And then at some point in time, they decided to get out of it. They didn't want to do it anymore. And I said, well, is anybody going to take it over? And they said, well, you can have it. And I go, well, can I keep the name? But then I added ministries to the end of it because people kept thinking I was a dating site. So, and I'm like, which is fine, I guess, for some, but I didn't really want those phone calls at 3 a.m. that I was getting. And so I changed the name, and I really thought it was just going to stay in Raleigh, that it was just going to be, connecting singles, building leaders. We had one event a month. Never thought it would go beyond that. And then I started getting calls from Richmond, and then calls from Greensboro, and then Nashville, and then Atlanta. And they said, can you come and help us do singles ministry? And that was my background. And I said, sure. And then somebody asked me to teach a retreat. And I'm like, I've led Bible studies, but I've never written anything, and I've never stood up that long. And I know it had to be horrible. But I did it. And that was the beginning of being an evangelist and teaching the word. And then in the meantime, the website, at the time it was a static site, like a lot of people's websites. And then I learned how to do something that had a life and movement and videos. And it just kept growing to being like a Wikipedia of singles ministry, to not only highlight what I was doing, but also to let other people, including y'all, to let other people know who else was out there that was writing books and articles and resources.
Yeah, fantastic. And so one of the things that we try to concentrate on through our program is the purposefulness in a single person's life. I know that we just aired not too long ago that it started out with Adam alone and a purpose with God.
Yeah.
And we really try to punch that in, that purpose matters so much in singleness. So tell us, you are very purpose filled and single. So, so tell us kind of what is the key where so many Christian singles are concentrating on, trying to get married and get dating right so that it could happen for them.
Yep.
But that's not really your concentration when it comes to feeling and experiencing your purpose.
Right. Well, again, I always tell people our purpose is not any different than a married person. Our purpose is a relationship with God that glorifies Him, because the enemy has a relationship. Understand, he was there before we were. Okay, so the enemy knows God and God knows the enemy, but it has to be a relationship that glorifies God. And then out of that relationship, a relationship with others to bring them to Christ. How we do that varies. Some people, dig ditches for a living, and some are doctors and lawyers and rock musicians, right? Some do it as married people and some do it as single. So our purpose does not change. It's just how we live it out. And so often singles say to me, well, I just want to know what my purpose is. And I'm going, you already know your purpose. What you're asking for is, how do I live it out? And so for some, we're taught as young people, marriage is how you live it out. Get married, have the babies, have the fence around the house, the dog, whatever, and then you'll feel your purpose. I'm going, no, your purpose has nothing to do with your marital status. But I feel like singles are longing to feel valuable, to feel that they're living more than just existing, that there's something else. And so often they think marriage or money or position, or doing some great things for the homeless community or whatever is going to fill that. And it's not. And so it really comes down to our relationship with God, and then listening to God. I love the Bible study Experiencing God. I did that like 30 some years ago, and it really focused it in Purpose Driven Life
Mhm.
focused on see where God's working and join in.
Yeah.
And if you're not supposed to be there, you're gonna figure that out. Children's ministry, not my thing. I like kids, but I don't want to watch them. So
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Kris, I remember when I was young and still single that there were lots of opportunities for singles to be involved in things. There were lots of ministries and outreaches that were taking place. Of course, this was years ago, and I'm only 22 now. So, why do you think that singles ministry have diminished in recent years?
yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
Yes. Well, a lot of it had to do with how do you define the single? So 30 years ago, singles were young. If you were over 35, there was nothing for you. The divorce rate was still somewhat not, bad or whatever. And so if you were divorced or widowed, they weren't being addressed at all. So anybody that was single was in that college 20 to mid 30s. So then when Divorce Care, which is a great program, Grief Share, Celebrate Recovery, when these programs started getting developed, it started drawing people that were older. And all of a sudden now they go through Divorce Care and they're now in church and now they're single. But wait a minute, I don't want to be around that 40-year-old when you're 25.
Sure.
So now we have a problem with marketing. How do we market to these demographics and meet their needs? And then what if they want to date? And then what do we do with that? Well, then online dating came along and social media came along and they started stealing our singles away. And then churches were like, well, then how do we meet all these different needs? Now we're talking about singles 18 to the grave. And then what about they're not reading anymore? Everything is online. And so now the curriculum is not needed. So those organizations stopped writing curriculum. Sunday school went to small groups, but singles don't like to go to someone's house they don't know. So we see churches that I call movie theater churches that just bursted out of the scene 25, 30 years ago, but they did not carry Sunday school. And Sunday school is where singles grow because we have community. And so all of these things factored in on top of spiritual warfare. How do we kill the single? How do we kill the family? Then how do we kill the couple? Then we kill the guy. So if men don't know who they are, if you, Gary, don't know whether you should open the door for me or not, if you're not clear in your identity, then how can you pursue a marriage and have a family or whatever? So we're seeing all of these things have impacted, but mainly marketing. Who do we market to? And the expense involved in that. So churches just said, we're just not going to do it. We're going to make you all join the rest of us.
And in your conversations with pastors as you're pursuing opportunities, are they echoing that? What are you hearing from pastors when you actually get an opportunity to talk to them? I know we've tried and we can barely get a door open here in Nashville.
Well, first of all the national organizations are gone. All of the national, retreats and conferences that were geared towards pastors are gone. There's no denominational directors anymore. That's all gone. And it's a demand supply. I mean, there's no seminary degree to be a singles pastor. Men don't go to seminary and go, oh, I hope one day I can lead single people. They've been married since they were 20. They don't understand what singleness is. So it's almost like a job that you're being punished that you have to do. And so we do see a lot of young adult pastors, which are typically the youth pastor who's now the young adult pastor. But once they turn 30, they just say, well, they should just go out. But here's the thing. The number one, the second most important thing in a church or in a Christian's life is first one is salvation. Second one, the second most important decision is who am I going to marry? And so if I don't have my church helping me in developing my relationship with God and friendships that are safe, then how can that lead to romance? So the church literally is sending people out into the world to find their mate. And you want to know why we have so much divorce and brokenness and hurting and single parent families. So there's not very many pastors out there. The ones that are leading singles, the ones that aren't, that I've talked to, they're like overwhelmed, guys. They're like, I'm just trying to meet the needs of what's coming. It's not that I get up on Sunday and go, oh, I hope I make Kris Swiatocho feel bad. I hope I offend her and she leaves. He's simply preaching to who he is, which is a 45-year-old male with 2 kids.
Yeah.
And that's his thing. And he met his bride when he was 22. And it's not that he doesn't care, but he can't relate. So there has to be an intentionality. And here's another thing, guys. If the only person that pastor is hearing from is a middle-aged, whiny woman that says, we want a singles ministry. Why don't we have a singles ministry? Why aren't you reaching singles? I wish you would reach me because I like to get married. Why aren't you helping me? Then they don't want anything to do with us. And so it's difficult. So what's happened is we're seeing para organizations that have been growing like crazy. So over the last 20 years, almost all singles ministry is Facebook or Meetup. Almost everything, and Instagram groups and individual groups and WhatsApp groups.
And even if it's Christian, it's happening outside of the
It
church.
is. But
Yeah.
the problem is a lot of them are social based and there's no covering, there's no protection. So when weird people come in, unhealthy people come in, people that have the wrong motive, they come in with, a lot of baggage and there's no one to handle it. The ministry can get in trouble. And we find that these para organizations are not nonprofits. They don't have any insurance. It's just dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what the church has done to us. They've pushed us into the world to do this. When I go, you do know, Pastor, that we outnumber married people. And that wasn't God's design. So, and it's going to get worse because nobody values marriage. So what is it? So for years I was door knocking like you guys, like, why don't you try to help it? And it's not working.
Yeah.
So I pray. I have a 21-day prayer thing on my website, and I ask people to pray for 21 days to change their church, to open up the door to go talk to their pastor. I'm not saying go to your pastor and say, Pastor, hire somebody right now and start this. But I'm saying, would you at least let me come and share with 2 or 3 friends what we are, who we are, what we look like, and what we're wanting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want a church within a church. I just simply want you to acknowledge that over half the country is not married. And unless you die when your spouse dies, you're going to be single, Pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably have a child that's not married and a mother that's not married. So can you not forget this demographic? Because I'll tell you guys, if my pastor includes me in a sermon, I don't really care whether I have great singles ministry or not. I know he sees me.
Right.
And he values me. And he doesn't make me feel like I can only serve in my church or lead in my church if I'm married.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent.
So then I said, okay, I guess Jesus couldn't serve. Paul, you're out of here, buddy, right?
You have a lot of experience through the years, and we appreciate that. What do you think is your most common concern that you hear from singles, and how would you answer that?
Yeah. Well, there are 3 top things that I hear over and over and over. The number one, which you guys probably know this well, why hasn't God brought me somebody? Well, for some people, it's like get a Tic Tac. Get a job, stop whining, stop complaining, get your life right, spend time with the Lord, become obedient. It's obvious. You meet them and go, oh my goodness, why would God give you someone when you are so unhealthy? But for others, I couldn't, I don't know necessarily. I mean, they're in church, they're tithing, they're serving, they appear healthy, they worked on themselves, they've got counseling. That's part of the reason I wrote the Intentional Relationship Bible Study with Pastor Dan Houck, is that we wanted to address all of our relationships, God and then others, because we thought, well, maybe there's something that you don't know that's there, that you appear healthy, but that it's there that hasn't been completely confronted. And that happened with me. I had stuff that I didn't even know about. So that at the end of the study, you either, wow, I'm in a pretty good place. I guess God doesn't want me married right now. Okay. Or, oh goodness, don't ever, if I ever ask you for somebody, just tell me go away. Cause I need to work on me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then some go, I need to work on this relationship, that relationship. So that's the number one. I get it. In 20 something ministry, we're still seeing a lot more guys and girls. By the time 30s and 40s, it evens out. And by the time you get over in the 50s, it's almost 15 to 5. It's like there'll be 15 women and like 3 weird guys.
Okay.
And that's just kind of what happens, right? But the desire has not changed for that. And so what people are really saying, especially when you're an older single, I don't know necessarily they all feel led to be married. I think they want community. And so they think it's marriage. Marriage is going to fix my life. It's going to fix my community. It's going to give me that person. Spend enough time with married people. And some of them don't even have community in their marriages. And so I'd rather stay single than be in a bad marriage, or wish I was single. The second one is being alone, loneliness. Really, really big one. I'm sure you guys have seen it, heard it, and you can be, of course, lonely in a marriage, but they don't know how to fix it. They don't know what to do. And so they're eating, they're doing, drinking, they're watching stuff they shouldn't watch, they're spending money, they're they are doing anything they can to get rid of that feeling.
Mhm.
And then the third one is why my church doesn't care about me.
Okay.
That's the three top that I hear all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I should write a book for just those three tops.
That would be great. And then even when all of those things are being brought forward, there's an even greater reality that God has you covered and he knows your beginning from your end. And so there's an element of trust and faith even that we think a lot of times is missing, that he is in charge of your life if you've given your life to
Yeah.
him. So rest in his goodness. So I appreciate that. Now, you yourself are single. So let's talk about Kris. Tell us, tell us a key or maybe a couple of keys on how you find contentment as a single woman. Are you still in a place where you desire marriage? And how do you work that tension out?
Well, I think it's interesting. So about a year ago, I actually got to a place that I was really content. I was I was going to do one of my podcasts and I was going to talk about contentment. And I said, let me do a search in my computer because I'm sure I've written on this topic somewhere. And I'll just glean my notes and, and restructure it. And I found something I wrote when I was 30 years old for a magazine. It was either Crosswalk or the Sam Journal. Sam Journal doesn't exist anymore. And I wrote this article on contentment and I'm reading it and going, liar, 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 liar. Because what I realized that at 30, I knew the concept of contentment that I should be okay if I stay single. I should be okay if I never have a house. I should be okay if I never get thin. I should be okay if I have no money. I mean, I should. I knew the knowledge of contentment. Like, okay, Paul says, I have this or have that. Well, the problem is I never really had the extremes like Paul was talking about. So now at my age, I am really at a place to where I feel like I understand contentment. And I don't think anybody can really young. They understand the concept, what they should be doing. But until you've lived where you've had little, when you've lived through a bad economy, when you've lived through COVID, when you've had love and your heart's been broken also in a bunch of pieces, I don't think you can truly understand what it is to say, I'm good either way. So I'm in a new season where even though I greatly support my friends who want to be married, I still teach on it. I still, with my studies and articles, I have stopped praying myself.
Okay.
And I am, some people know my viewers is that my mother lives with me and I want her to finish well.
Sure.
And I don't want her to worry about things in her life changing. So I'm in a season of helping her take care of her and continuing to work on content. And I just stopped praying. Now, I'm not saying if God has somebody he puts in front of me and he says, I'm going to be obedient, but I've just that longing and that waiting and that looking and I'm trying to look into intentional friendships with guys and maybe that one. All of that has stopped because I am really in a good place.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think too that there also comes a place where God doesn't need to hear us asking anymore because the prayer.
Because it sounds like you're desperate, like
Yes,
you're not trusting him. It's all on you.
right. And if I'm not reminding him, then he's going to forget. And it's just the silly things like that. I know was a personal conviction for me is he's looking at me going, Kim, you don't have to ask me every day or every week. I'm the one who initiated the desire in the first place. Don't think I'm not going to fulfill it in its time. So that's really great.
Well, and I went from being, looking all the time and opening that door. And every time I go to a gathering, I do my filtering questions and then, and so on. And then my study, I wrote about intentional friendship and I had several of these. And then a year ago, I just like said, you know what, I'm in a new season. I really like this season. I want to do other things. And right now, I don't think I have time to have a relationship with a guy and also continue to do what God's called me to do. And because as a single, I get to do things that married people can't do. And I love that.
How has singleness transformed you?
Yeah.
Simple.
And it's just like that. Like I get to go places and do things and be around people. I can hang out and talk to a guy in the parking lot about ministry, about life, and not worry that I have a husband or that I got to check in. I can spend money only the way God directs me. I can make decisions, just me and God. I do not have to have that part. Now I'm saying marriage is wonderful and I think it's what God created. But for me as a single, like I think I am the most successful single you'll ever meet. And I really am, like successfully single. Like, someone says, when people say, how many years have you been married? I've been married 40 years, happily married 40 years. I'm like, I'm happily single for the years too. Right. And so I think that, I look at my life instead of like what's not complete or what's not been done. I just look at it as like, Lord, I want to be like Paul. I want to do the best I can and I want to end well, because in heaven we're not married. And so I just want to build relationships for the kingdom. And if one of them turns out to be a marriage partner, because that's what he wants for me, then that's fine.
It sounds like when you talk about transformation from that 20-year-old Kris to that 30-year-old Kris to now,
Yeah.
it seems as though one of those transformational experiences has also been the desperation has left.
Yes. Oh yeah. Desperation. Also just fear, picking wrong friends, picking, keeping people in my life that, I was maybe more self-motivated than it was God motivated, allowing people to leave that I did nothing to them. Like they didn't do anything to me. I didn't do anything to them, but I cannot bring new people in that God wants me to minister and build friendships with if I hold on to everybody else.
Yeah.
Being open to trying new things, going places, being around people. I travel to Europe and do missions, like stepping out, getting out. I meet singles that have never left their towns. They've never left their state. And I'm just going, you're just living life. John 10:10 is that's my verse. It's been my verse for a long time. The enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come to give life abundantly, or to the fullest. And I remind singles all the time, the enemy wants to steal everything, your identity, your value, your hope, your dreams, everything, your money. And then he wants to kill you physically, emotionally, spiritually. And then he wants to destroy you as if you never existed. You never witnessed anybody. You never shared life with anybody. You never encouraged anybody. But Christ came to give life abundantly. Now, what does that look like? It's not, I got money every day and I'm got a man and I got this. I'm saying, what's the opposite of abundant life? So if I said, oh, Gary, he just lives he don't live a very abundant life. And he'd be like, okay, what does that look like? He stays home. He's got, 20 cat figurines. Oh no, he's got some other figurines I've seen. He's got, knickknacks everywhere. And all he does is collect knickknacks and sits in his recliner and eats all day. That would be not an abundant life. But an abundant life is you're living it and you're taking risks and you're getting your heart broken and you're building friendships and people that might betray you. And you're taking a risk and you're going out and doing things you would never do. And you're serving in ways. I helped with Samaritan's Purse and with the hurricane down in Florida. And then we had a hurricane here and I've been on the ground helping, doing stuff I would never do. You know what I'm saying? I would never do. That's an abundant life. Yeah. I want to come home and look at my work boots and go, I don't know what's on the boots, but I'm living life abundantly.
That's awesome. It's a lot of great encouragement. And you are a perfect example of living that abundant life. And I like to ask this question to our guests. Gary and I touch a lot on the different love stories in the Bible, and we kind of pull out the fingerprints of God to show people where he's been involved and how he leads, how he confirms. So out of the love stories in the Bible, what is your favorite and why?
Well, probably one of my favorites, and it's not a traditional, because this question means something different to me when you said it. And it's probably because it's one of my favorite people in the Bible is Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
And I thought of love for her as a female like me with a past similar to hers. And he found me in the middle of my mess. And not only did he have a plan for her, he took this broken, hurt, bugs all in her hair, probably hair, living on the streets, all the demons in her. And he transformed her to not only a new person, but she was the first person that found out that he'd risen from the dead. And she got to say to the disciples that he's not there. And I love it because God took a woman that had the worst background and he gave her the most important job, and she's single.
Yeah.
And I said, that's how much he loved her.
Yeah.
And that's how much he loves you. That you don't have to live in where you used to be and in your past and in your brokenness. That God wants to give you a new life. He wants to save you. He wants to give you a chance to do things differently. You're not going to say forget. You're forgiven, but you might not forget. But that to me is even better, because I what helps keep me going forward is remembering where he found me. Don't ever forget where he found you.
Mhm.
And so to think of what she got to do as a single woman, he loved women, he valued us, he elevated us.
There you go.
So that to me is probably one of the greatest love stories, is
Yeah.
he received his love
Mhm.
and changed. And as a result, at the very end, he had died, he had risen from the dead. She went with his mother, with a group of people, and they continued the work of God.
Yeah.
That to me is powerful.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Did you have another question?
I don't.
He doesn't have any more questions.
Okay. So what is your favorite love story? I turned it around. Oh.
There you go.
Well, it's cool that we weren't thinking in terms of that, but that's a very, very great perspective and a point of relation.
Yeah.
And man, kudos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? As singles, so often singles, they'll say, "Why is the church so much about marriage?" And I'm going, because marriage is important. But it's so much about marriage that they forget not everybody will get married. And so wouldn't it be great? It could also be about living successfully as a single, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
So to be able to focus on Paul and Mary and Jeremiah and Martha and Mary Magdalene, and talk about these people in the Bible that lived life as a single that also had value and meaning. I want them. And then Jesus, the ultimate single. In my study, Jesus Single Like Me, I always tell people, if you can't get excited about the Savior of the world and his singleness, then how do you get excited about yours? I'm not saying that I don't understand and relate to someone who's hurting and struggling for whatever reason, but I want them to know that they can have an incredible life where they are until God moves them.
Yeah.
So don't keep, thy word is a lamp into thy feet, not into that yardstick or mile. Thy word is a lamp right here where you are, and you're not supposed to get too far ahead.
Yeah.
But if I could say one last thing to your viewers, you need community. You cannot be watching sermons online all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have people around you. It takes a risk. It's hard. It's hard to build new relationships. People are imperfect. People are going to let you down, but it takes work. You got to work as much as they work. Build those people. Join a group at church, married or single. Build people around you. Build that community. It takes work. And guess what? Somebody in that community might be the one.
Might be.
And it might not be, but it's okay. Because now I've got a group of friends that will grow along with me.
Yeah.
And love me, hopefully, where I am.
Yeah.
As God continues to change me to be who he wants me to be.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We know that you are just a gem, a wealth of knowledge and experience, and your exuberance just speaks loudly that Jesus is worth the wait.
Yes.
And he is absolutely worth the devotion. So kudos to you. We love you so much, and we're so grateful that you joined us. And to our viewers, always remember and don't ever forget, the God of the Bible is
the God of the romantic.